Sweeping tariffs from the Trump administration that impact imported vehicles and certain foreign-made auto parts went into effect Thursday morning. Goldman Sachs estimates that the auto tariffs could raise prices between $5,000 and $15,000, depending on the vehicle's make, model, and manufacturing location. Even U.S. manufactured automobiles could see price increases up to $8,000 because of the imported parts they contain. About half of all vehicles sold in the U.S. were assembled in America, according to a Cars.com report. But there's no such thing as a 100% made in America automobile because of imported parts and basic materials like steel. A 1992 law called the American Automobile Labeling Act requires companies to report to the government how many parts used in their vehicles come from the U.S. and Canada or other nations. Tesla, for example, manufactures 100% of its vehicles in the U.S., but depending on the model, up to 40% of its parts come from places outside America or Canada. The average automobile insurance premium could also rise 19%, according to digital insurance agent Insurify, because vehicles will become more expensive to repair. CBS News' Money Watch team found some brands will be more impacted than others. 55% of GM supply is made outside the U.S. Non-American companies, including Toyota, Honda, Kia, and Hyundai, all manufacture a large percentage of their automobiles in other countries and import many of the parts for vehicles that are made stateside. It's not guaranteed that all companies will pass costs from tariffs directly onto consumers, but at least some say they will. Italian automobile maker Ferrari announced it will raise prices by 10% because of the tariffs. The Southern Shrimp Alliance, which represents the U.S. shrimp industry, is praising the Trump administration's tariffs on nearly all foreign imports. In a statement Wednesday, John Williams, the executive director of the nonprofit organization, said the president's tariffs will, quote, preserve American jobs, food security, and our commitment to ethical production. Williams added, quote, if we wait for systemic reforms, we will lose our domestic shrimp industry. To put that into context, the Southern Shrimp Alliance says more than 90% of all U.S. shrimp and seafood is imported from overseas. The top three suppliers of shrimp to the U.S. are India, which has a tariff rate of 26%, Ecuador, which has a tariff rate of 10%, and Indonesia, which has a tariff rate of 32%. For more, let's bring in Leann Bosarge. She's a board member representing Mississippi for the Southern Shrimp Alliance, and she and her family have long worked in the fishing and shrimping industries, operating a fleet of vessels in the Gulf and South Atlantic. Leann, first off, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Can you outline how previous policies have hurt the shrimping industry?
So first, you need to understand probably that the U.S. domestic shrimp industry is made up of small, multi-generational fishing family businesses. And so for the last 2 decades, those small businesses have actually been trying to combat the unfair trade on a global scale. If you can imagine how daunting a task that is. And yesterday, I think our industry finally felt like we had a recognition from yes, the top, the U.S. president, but also policymakers and trade representatives that this unfair trade does in fact exist, that we have been fighting it, that we need help, and that it's time for change, that it has to be addressed.
How did exports become such a big part of the business?
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
How did exports become such a big part of the business? How is it that you guys are having to face such an uphill climb when it comes to foreign producers of seafood?
So that's actually part of the unfair trade. If you look at what has brought on the development of this overseas foreign shrimp aquaculture industry, it is subsidies, right? Our U.S. tax dollars go to the government, and then some of those tax dollars get funneled to international financial institutions like the World Bank, for example. They have had an interest for many decades now in shrimp aquaculture overseas, and they have actually used those dollars to fund the infrastructure necessary to build up that overseas aquaculture industry, which then takes that product that was subsidized and ships it right back into our U.S. markets for our U.S. industry, which is not subsidized, to compete directly against. And that's just one of the unfair trade practices.
Is it an overstatement to say the president's announcement Wednesday will save your business?
It is the first step towards saving our industry. What it gave us was immediate relief, because honestly, our industry is at a precipice. If we don't have some sort of immediate relief, I don't know that you'll have any more multi-generational fishing families. I don't know that my son will be in the business or his son or daughter after him. So yesterday gave us immediate relief, and that immediate relief is going to buy us enough time to hopefully address the systemic reforms that are needed to stamp out this unfair trade in the foreign overseas aquaculture industry.
I am out of time with you, but I do want to ask, why do you think it should be important to consumers that they consume domestic aquaculture?
That they consume domestic wild caught product, because our product is actually wild caught. So it's an all natural product. We're sustainably managed and we feed America. That's what we want to do. We are an industry of hardworking fishermen. We want nothing more than to go out and make an honest living and provide a protein for our American citizens. So if you can buy American, please, we need it desperately.
Leann Bosarge, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
American business owners who import products from China will be subject to a 34% tariff on goods on top of the 20% blanket tariffs that were already imposed. So 54% for anyone doing that math at home. David Mauro joins us now. He's the founder of JesusDoll.com, a plush toy business. David, you worked at Salesforce before you started this business. This is your income now. How much do you import from China or rely on China or other countries for your business?
Yeah. Hey, Lindsay, we've been in business 3 years and we've been working with a manufacturer in China from day one to produce a product, to refine it, to make it better, to even to make more products. So we're entirely reliant on that production, their industry over there. Now, when we started making toys in America, that didn't exist. That industry does not exist here. Making plush toys, like you're showing on the screen, that industry does not exist here. So we had no other option than to look overseas.
What are you expecting in terms of cost when you get your next shipment? And what will you do? Will you absorb that or will you have to pass it on?
Yeah, so we have a shipment right now that's leaving port in China, and it'll be, when it gets here, it's about $60,000 worth of goods. And when it gets here, we're going to get hit with a, you just did the math there, 54%. That's about $30,000+. I got to stroke a check for $30,000 and get nothing for it.
To the U.S. government.
That's tough for a small business to do. That's tough for an individual to do. That hurts, right? So, we're going to have to take out a loan, maybe, dip into our child's college education. But we've got to get that money back. So we'll have to raise prices. We'll have to pass that along. And, when you raise prices, you don't sell as much, and you have a whole interconnected downstream effect of that. Our retailers will get squeezed between our price increases and what the consumer is willing to pay. So there's a lot of trouble ahead, depending on how long this lasts. But it's definitely going to hurt me in about 2 months.
What about the argument this will increase U.S. manufacturing?
Well, this industry and a lot of industries in America that are being affected by these tariffs, they were hollowed out over decades and decades and decades. You can't just flip a switch and all of a sudden, hey, all factories are sprouting up everywhere. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of investment. It takes a lot of building supply chains and talent and capability. That's not something that happens overnight. So, if we all go to zero and everybody's trading freely, that's great. But if you have an industry like shrimp, you have to protect. I understand that. That's great. But there's no industry in my business to protect. So it's just a punitive tax essentially on the American consumer. And that just dislocates all the business that's happening. And it just creates a lot of chaos for guys like me and customers like mine.
Do you worry this will put you out of business?
No, I don't, because we're gonna push along. We're gonna do everything we know how to do. We're gonna pray. We're gonna obey, and God's gonna show us a way. So we're not worried right now.
All right. Well, David Mauro, thank you for sharing your story with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.